In this lecture, we will introduce some additional string methods.
The next method we're going to take a look at is the pad left method. Now this is a method that you probably haven't seen in other languages, but it's a pretty interesting and useful string method. So the idea with this method is we're going to create a brand new string and we're going to specify the length of this new string. But what we're going to do is alter the beginning of the string. What's going to happen is one of a couple things. The beginning of the string is either going to be padded with spaces or it's going to be padded with a specific character. So the idea with this is we're going to say make the string this length instead of the original length, and we're going to do that by adding a specific character at the beginning of the string. It could be a space, it could be a different character, but we're going to just keep padding characters at the beginning of the string until we get the desired length. So the way this method works is we have two parameters. The first parameter is going to be an integer, and this is going to indicate the total length of the new string. So this is going to say this is the length we want the string to be now, not what it used to be. And we're going to assume, of course, that it's going to be a larger string than what the original string was. The second parameter is going to be a character. It's a single character, and this is the character that's going to be padded at the beginning such that if you add enough of these characters to the string, we get the total desired length. Like for example, let's say we change the length of the string to be 2 more characters than what it originally was. And then whatever character we put in the second parameter means that we're going to add 2 of those characters at the beginning, and then that means the total length of the new string will be the desired amount. Now this character could be a space, and that's why we mentioned that we could pad the beginning with spaces, or it could be some other character. But it has to be a single character that would be padded at the beginning. Let's look at an example of the pad left method to help explain it. So here we have a string str, which has the string 234.89, and then we're calling the method pad left. We're going to pass a 7 and then the $sign character. So the current length of our string is going to be 6. There are 6 characters in the string. The dot counts as a character. So when we call the pad left method and we pass the 7 and the $sign, what that means is we're going to keep adding the $sign character to the beginning of our string until the total length of the new string is 7 characters. In this case, since the original length is 6, when we add a single $sign to the front, the length of the new string is now 7, so we would stop. And then we would see that we would store that in str. So what that means is our string is going to contain the $234.89. Now there is a variation of the pad left method where it takes a single parameter instead of 2 parameters. So what happens in this case is we're going to keep adding spaces until the length of the new string is the value of this parameter. So we're really just using the original approach, except we're using only the first parameter and we're not including the second parameter. So let's look at an example of how we would do this. So here is the same string from our last example. So we have 234.89, and then we call pad left on the string and we pass the value 10. And what this is saying is we're going to just keep adding spaces to the front of our string until the total length is 10. So if we remember, the length of the original string is 4. So that means we would need to add 4 spaces in order for the total length to be 10. So what that means is our string is now going to have 4 spaces. It's kind of hard to see here that there's 4 spaces, but sure enough, there are 4 spaces here. But we would have 4 spaces in the front, and then we would have 234.89. Here is another example of the pad left method, and what we see here is we're actually use the same cascading approach that we did with our insert method in the last lecture. So we see that we're going to have a double variable and a string, and we're doing quite a few things in here. We're calling the toString method, pad left, and insert. So I'm going to leave this as an exercise for you. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take a look at this code, and based on what we talked about with the toString method, the pad left method, and the insert method, I want you to tell me what's going to be stored in str. Now, if you need to, go ahead and pause the video, work it out a little bit on your own, and when you think you know the answer, go ahead and resume, and we'll see if you got it or not. So let's look at what's going on in here. So we have a double variable called salary, and that's going to store 1934.89. And then we have a string variable called str. And then we see that we have the toString method. We're going to call it on our salary variable. And then we have the padLeft method where we pass an 8 and a $sign character. And then we have the insert method where we pass a 2 and then just a comma as our string. So the way we do cascading method calls, as we've seen before, is we go from left to right, unless there are some other parentheses going on in here. So we're first going to call salary.toString in order to convert the salary variable into a string, because right now it's a double. So that means our string would be 1934.89. So then we're going to call the padLeft method on this new string. And what this is saying here is we're going to pad $signs at the beginning until the length of the new string has 8 characters. So we see that in our original string, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. So the length of the original string is 7. So this means we're going to add one more $sign, just one $sign, and then the total length of the new string would be 8. This means our updated string at this point is going to be $1934.89. Now we're going to call the insert method on this string. And what this is saying is we're going to add the comma at index 2 and then shove everything else over. So where's index 2? Well, the $sign is index 0. The 1 is index 1. So 9 is index 2. That means we're going to insert the comma right after the 1, and then we're going to move the rest of the string over one spot. So that's going to be our final string, and that's what will get stored in str. So that means our final string is going to be $1934.89 with the comma between the 1 and the 9. We also have the padWrite method, and you can probably take a wild guess what this method is going to do. Yeah, so the padWrite method is going to create a new string, and this is going to be a string of some specified length where the end of the current string is either going to be additional spaces, so we're going to either pad the end with spaces, or we're going to pad it with a specific character. So this is going to work just like the padLeft method. The only difference is instead of padding characters at the beginning of the string, we're going to pad characters at the end of the string. This method is going to take 2 parameters, and these are going to be the same types of parameters that we did for the padLeft method. So the first parameter will be the integer that gives us the desired length of the new string. So we're going to have to add some characters to the end. And then the second parameter is going to be the character that we actually pad at the end in order to get the desired length of the new string. Here is an example of how we would use the padWrite method. So our original string str is going to be 100, and then we see that we're going to call padWrite where we pass a 5 and then we're going to pass the character C. So our original length is 3, and our method is saying that we're going to keep adding C at the end of the string until we have 5 characters. So since our original length is 3, we want to get a length 5. That means that we're going to add 2 C's to the end of the string in order to get the length 5. And that means that our new string is going to be 100cc. The next method we'll take a look at is called the contains method. And what this method does is it lets us search for a particular substring within a string. And this method is a Boolean method, so it's going to return true or false. All we're really doing here is just checking, is a substring, a specific substring within the current string? If so, this is going to return true. If it's not there, it's going to return false. So let's take a look at a simple example of how we would use this method. So let's say we have the following code. So we have a string variable that has the string information systems, and then we have an if-then statement that calls the contains method. So here we have some text box, which we call text box 1, So what we're going to be doing is having the user enter some text that's going to get stored in the text property of text box 1. So if whatever the user enters is in the information system string, so the exact text is a substring of the string information systems, then what we see here is we're going to display a message box and show the string yes. And if it's not the case, then nothing's going to happen. So for example, let's say textbox1.text has the string 4. So the user entered the word 4. We would actually see a message box that displays yes, because 4 is in the string. We see it right here in information, so right there. So since it does exist in our string with those exact characters in that order, then the contains method would return true, so we would display the message box saying the word yes. Now let's say we do something different. Let's say the user enters the text 2. Well, what's going to happen is this is going to return false. Even though we have a T and we do have an O in the string, we don't have the word 2 anywhere together. So this means that 2 is not contained in the string information systems. That means the contains method is going to return false. Therefore, we wouldn't see a message box displayed.